I spent last Christmas on the road. Most people think delivery work gets easier in December because customers order early, stores prep ahead, and the holiday rush evens out. That's a lie. If anything, December is when everything falls apart. I was only 3 months into the job, still figuring out which rural roads had potholes big enough to swallow your tire and which convenience stores stayed open later than they claimed. I didn't want to step on any toes, so when the schedule came out and nobody volunteered for the late-night runs leading up to Christmas, I put my name down. I told my mom I didn't mind working. I told her I needed the money. Both were true, so on December 22nd, around 11:40 p.m., I found myself alone on County Road 12, a long, bleak stretch of 2-lane asphalt that cut through miles of fields and thin, dying woods. The kind of road where your headlights dissolve into fog and everything beyond that looks like a painting someone smudged with their thumb. The snow had been falling since late afternoon, soft, steady, the kind that covered everything in a clean layer, but didn't feel dangerous yet. The heater was barely keeping the cabin warm. It rattled whenever I hit a bump, blowing air that was warmer than outside but not warm enough to call comfortable. I could see my breath faintly each time I exhaled. My company truck wasn't the worst vehicle I'd driven, but it had quirks. The right headlight flickered sometimes. The brake pedal was too soft unless you pushed it all the way down. And the radio only picked up AM stations after dark. That night, the only thing playing was a talk show host ranting about holiday flight delays. His voice was scratchy, like someone dragging sandpaper across a microphone. But it broke the silence, so I kept it on. At one point, I slowed down because the snow thickened and I didn't trust the road shoulder. The speedometer hovered around 38 miles per hour, which felt safe enough. That's when I saw the shape. Far ahead at the edge of my high beams, a figure, not moving, not walking, just standing. At first I thought it was a deer because of how still it was, but the shape was too tall, too narrow, too human. I eased my foot off the gas. The truck glided forward, tires crunching faintly over icy patches. The closer I got, the more I saw. A man, tall, wearing a long, dark coat that reached past his knees, hands at his sides, head tilted toward the tree line like he was listening for something deep in the forest. He didn't turn toward the truck, didn't flinch, didn't look cold, even though he was standing in falling snow without gloves or a hat. I drifted toward the center of the road to give him room, gripping the wheel tighter. Something about him felt off, not dramatic, not supernatural, just wrong in a way my brain couldn't describe yet. As I passed him, I glanced in the side mirror. I swear his face was pale, eyes wide open, and his mouth stretched into something like a smile. But the moment I focused, the snow hit the mirror and blurred everything. I told myself I imagined it. The talk radio guy laughed suddenly at one of his own jokes, and the sound made me jump. I shook my head, breathed out slowly. It was late, I was tired. Snow played tricks on your eyes. I told myself all of that, and for about 30 seconds, I actually believed it. Then my phone buzzed. The vibration rattled the empty cup holder. I glanced down expecting a message from my supervisor or maybe my mom checking in. Instead, the notification read, "One new message, unknown number." "Did you see me?" My stomach dropped so hard it felt like the seatbelt tightened. I grabbed the wheel with both hands and stared dead ahead, refusing to open the message. The truck drifted onto the rumble strip, jolting me hard enough that I cursed under my breath and corrected. "Nope," I muttered. "Nope, nope." I turned the radio off. Silence filled the cabin instantly. The snow thickened. My wipers squeaked loudly across the glass. The road stretched on in a straight line, empty and white, like it led to nowhere. And then, about a minute later, the headlights picked up something ahead again. Another figure. My pulse spiked. But as the truck rolled closer, I realized it wasn't another figure. It was the same one. Same coat, same stance, same tilt of the head. Only this time, he stood directly in the middle of my lane, forcing me to slam the brakes. The truck fishtailed slightly before sliding to a shaky stop about 15 feet from him. My horn blared long and loud. He didn't move. I locked the doors automatically. My breathing went shallow as I leaned forward, trying to see his face through the falling snow. He didn't turn, didn't react, didn't even shift his weight. It was like he was a statue placed in the road, like he had been waiting there. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. My body begged me not to look, but I did. Unknown number. Stop! The cold air seemed to bite through my jacket even inside the truck. My fingers tingled. My neck felt prickly, like someone was watching me from inches away. The man slowly, and I mean painfully slowly, raised both arms. Then he pointed at me. Not waved, not beckoned, just pointed. Two stiff arms, aimed straight at the truck. Straight at me. I felt something in me snap. I threw the truck into reverse. Tires spun, searching for grip. The rear end swerved slightly, but I didn't care. I pressed the gas until the engine whined. The man didn't chase me, didn't move at all. He just stayed there, arms up, pointing. When I was far enough, I jerked the wheel and swerved around him, nearly dipping into the snow-covered ditch. The truck straightened out, and I floored it. My hands shook so violently I had to wipe my palms on my jeans. I kept checking the rearview mirror, even though I knew he wouldn't be there. Or maybe I was terrified he would be. But all I saw was darkness and swirling snow. After about 3 miles, the panic ebbed just enough for me to breathe normally. The road curved slightly and I hit a stretch where trees lined both sides. My headlights flickered once, that old light bulb again, and I tapped the casing with my fist like an idiot, as if that would fix the electrical issue. Eventually, I pulled into a gas station in a small town. 1:02 a.m., according to the truck clock. The place was nearly empty except for the clerk and some guy buying cigarettes. The bright fluorescent lights inside felt unreal after being in the dark for so long. I grabbed a coffee even though I hate gas station coffee. My hands were trembling so badly the lid clicked unevenly. I pretended to browse the snack aisle, letting the warmth settle me. When I finally walked back to the truck, I stood outside for a moment, just staring at the snow around my tires. No footprints, no signs of anyone approaching. Nothing strange. I got inside, locked the doors again, and checked my phone. The messages were gone. Not deleted. Gone. Like they'd never been sent. I don't mean the number disappeared. I mean there was no record. No unknown sender, no notification, no recently deleted, just empty. I sat there for a long time, replaying everything, trying to convince myself it was exhaustion and nerves. But if it was exhaustion, how did my phone vibrate? If it was nerves, why did the man appear twice? If it was nothing, why did my headlights reflect a smile in the mirror? I eventually drove home by taking the long route, a 40-minute detour through well-lit neighborhoods. I didn't step foot on County Road 12 again that night, or any night after. The next morning I tried to rationalize it. Maybe there was a stranded hitchhiker. Maybe someone messed with me. Maybe I really did misunderstand everything. But late that afternoon, around 4:17 p.m., I received a single text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. It was a picture of County Road 12, taken from the middle of the asphalt, facing the tree line. Snow falling, tire tracks visible, footprints leading from the shoulder to the road. And there, barely visible on the far right edge, was a blurry shape, tall, still, facing the woods, the same tilt of the head. I deleted the photo immediately, turned my phone off, sat in silence for an hour. I never told my coworkers, never told my parents, never told the company. But I still think about him, the pointing, the messages, the way he was waiting for me the second time. And sometimes, late at night, when the world feels quiet and the snow starts falling again, my phone vibrates once. Just a single short buzz, but with no notification. Like someone is reminding me, he knows I saw him, and he was never finished with me. Christmas Eve doesn't hit me the same way it used to. When I was younger, it was one of those nights I genuinely looked forward to. Crowded living rooms, too much food, loud cousins, and that feeling that for a few hours the world got a little softer. My aunt's place in Mapleton Ridge was the center of it all. She lived on a quiet little street that looked like something from an old postcard. White fences, flickering lampposts, porches decorated with tangled lights that nobody ever bothered fixing. That year, the year this happened, I got there early. Earlier than anyone else, actually. It was about 5:30 p.m. The sky was already turning that deep December blue, the kind that looks almost purple before the streetlights kick in. I parked across the road like I always did, facing the house directly opposite my aunt's. That house. It had been empty for years. A faded blue two-story with a sagging porch, one broken shutter, and windows so dusty they reflected the world like cloudy mirrors. Realtors kept listing it, dropping the price every few months, but no one ever bought it. People joked it smelled like mold and regret inside. I didn't think much of it. It was just background scenery. An abandoned house you don't even register anymore. My aunt opened the door before I could knock, already shouting instructions. Take your shoes off, help me with the plates, grab the boxes from the hallway. I stepped inside and the warmth hit me like a wall. Roasting chicken, cinnamon candles, Netflix playing some Christmas movie in the background. It felt normal, but every now and then, without really understanding why, I would drift to the window and glance outside. And each time I felt the same thing, a tug, a pull, like something in that empty house wanted attention. The first odd thing happened around 6:40 p.m. I remember that time because my cousin begged me to check the oven for her, and I burned my hand on the top rack. I walked to the sink to run cold water on it, and the kitchen window overlooked the front street. I looked up and froze. A light was on in the house across the street. The upstairs bedroom window glowed a faint, yellowish color. Not LED, not bright. More like an old incandescent bulb, dim and uneven. I stared at it for maybe 10 seconds, trying to remember if I'd seen it on earlier. I hadn't. I was sure I hadn't. Then something moved behind the curtain. A shape, slow, human-sized. I held my burned hand under the water and didn't blink. My heart began to thump in that dull, heavy way you feel when you sense danger, but haven't processed it yet. Then my aunt called my name from the living room, breaking my focus. I blinked, shook it off, and when I looked back, the light was gone. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a car passed by. Maybe my brain was tired after the shift I'd worked. Anything rational. But the feeling didn't go away. As the night went on, the house filled up. More cousins, more noise, more plates piled high on the dining table. But I stayed restless. Around 7:10 p.m., I stepped outside to take a call from a coworker. I walked halfway down the driveway, looking for better reception. The air was cold enough to sting my nose. Snowflakes drifted lazily around me, melting on my jacket. And then, like a punch, I felt eyes on me. I looked straight across the street. The upstairs light was on again, dim, yellow, just like before. This time the shape moved slower, as if deliberately staying behind the curtain, but not fully hiding. I whispered, "Hello?" I don't know why. Maybe I expected someone to wave, or step forward, or disappear again. The curtain shifted, just a tiny bit, like someone had grasped it lightly between their fingers. My breath fogged the air in front of me. My fingers tightened around my phone. And then, "Merry Christmas!" my cousin screamed from behind me, jumping onto my back. I scrambled forward, almost dropping the phone, and she laughed like she hadn't just shaved 5 years off my lifespan. When I turned back toward the house, dark, no light, no movement. My cousin dragged me back inside, but the unease sat heavy in my stomach. The next strange thing didn't happen until later, around 10:45 p.m. My aunt asked me to grab napkins or plates or something from my car. I remember groaning because the cold had gotten worse, but I still went. The street was dead silent. The snow-covered asphalt had that smooth, untouched look to it, except for one detail. Footprints, a set of them. Fresh, deep, clean. They led from the sidewalk directly in front of the empty house, across the street, and straight to my car. I stopped moving. The hair on my arm stood up despite the jacket. I followed the footprints visually, step by step, until they reached the driver's side door and ended there. My door handle was wet, glossy with melted snow, as if someone had held it. I backed away instinctively, staring at the empty street, half expecting someone to sprint out from behind a mailbox. But nothing moved, nothing breathed, nothing made a sound. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out with numb fingers. Unknown number, one new message. I opened it. It was a photo taken from across the street, taken within the last 10 seconds. It showed me, standing next to my car, looking down at the footprints. It was taken from the exact angle of the porch of the abandoned house. My lungs tightened. My throat felt thick, like someone had their hand around it. I didn't go back for whatever my aunt wanted. I didn't even walk near my car again. I sprinted across the street, boots slipping on the ice, and didn't stop until I was inside, door shut, back pressed against it. My aunt asked something about the plates. I told her the car was locked. I told her I couldn't find them. I lied because the truth felt insane. For the rest of the night, every time someone opened the door, or a window creaked, or a kid laughed too loudly, I jumped. I kept glancing through the curtains at the house across the street. It stayed dark, completely dark. When the party finally wound down, my uncle offered to walk me to my car. I didn't even try to play it cool. I took him up on it instantly. We walked across the quiet road. The footprints that had been there earlier were gone. The snow was perfectly smooth, like nothing had ever walked through it. My car was cold, untouched, ordinary. No wet handle, no imprints, nothing. My uncle wished me a safe drive and went back inside. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute, gripping it, trying to decide whether I should just sleep in the guest room instead of driving home. But I forced myself to breathe, turned on the engine, and made the short trip back to my apartment. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Christmas morning, I woke to my phone buzzing. A notification, one image from unknown number. My heart sank. The picture wasn't from the street, or the sidewalk, or anywhere I recognized. It was taken from inside the abandoned house, from behind a window I had seen 1,000 times, a window covered in dusty curtains. And through the curtain, I could see the street outside, snow falling, a faint glow from the lamppost, and faintly across the road, my aunt's house. Warm lights, Christmas decorations, silhouettes moving inside. The angle was perfect, like someone had been standing right at the glass, watching. The picture was time-stamped 7:13 a.m., meaning someone had been inside the house that morning, hours after I left. I didn't reply, didn't show anyone, didn't delete it either. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted proof that it really happened, or maybe I was afraid deleting it would make something worse happen. I didn't go back to my aunt's the next year. I made an excuse about work, about being tired. But even now, every Christmas Eve, without fail, I get a new photo from that same unknown number, always taken from a different angle, always showing me somewhere, through a window, a doorway, a reflection. The last one, the one from last year, showed me standing outside my apartment building, taken from across the street. Same angle as the photo of me by my car, same distance, same framing, like someone hasn't stopped watching, like someone followed me home that night, like someone still knows exactly where I'll be on Christmas Eve. Every year, without fail. I spent Christmas Eve of 2019 alone. It wasn't supposed to be that way. I was meant to drive down to my cousin's house, a 3-hour trip on the A78, spend the night with everyone, eat too much food, argue over card games, normal stuff. But a storm warning hit that afternoon. Winds up to 80 miles per hour, heavy ice, roads likely to be blocked. My cousins told me to stay home and come in the morning when the weather cleared, so I stayed in my small rental house just outside town. It was around 9:50 p.m. when the storm settled into that steady, angry rhythm, wind slamming the siding, trees scraping the windows, the long whine of cold air squeezing through tiny gaps in the house. I made cocoa, put on some old Christmas songs, tried to pretend the night wasn't as depressing as it felt. The living room was lit only by the Christmas tree, white lights, No ornaments except a few metallic ones I bought from a store bin. The place looked festive enough, but it felt off. Too quiet between the gusts of wind. Too still. I kept checking my phone. No new messages. No signal half the time anyway. I remember thinking, this night is going to drag. I had no idea. It was around 10:18 p.m. when the first strange thing happened. The lights on my tree flickered, just once. Not the whole power, just the Christmas lights. I frowned, leaned forward, and watched them. Nothing. Just steady white bulbs. I shrugged it off as a loose plug, but when I looked at my window, the tall one facing the backyard, I froze for a second. I thought I saw a shadow move. Not dramatic, not some silhouette pressed against the glass. Just a movement. Like someone walked past the window from left to right. I felt a tiny jolt in my chest, the kind you get when you think you lose your footing. I stood up, went to the window and peered outside. Nothing. Just the yard coated with fresh snow, the wooden fence, the old shed, the neighbor's dark house. Everything quiet except the wind dragging powder across the ground. I stayed there longer than I needed to, watching my own reflection staring back at me. I even wiped a circle in the fog glass to see better. Still nothing. But the feeling stuck with me. That quiet, instinctive sense that I wasn't entirely alone in the yard. I tried to ignore it and sat back down. Picked a new playlist. Adjusted the blanket over my legs. At 10:32 p.m., the lights flickered again. Twice. This time the radio cut for half a second too, like something interfered with the power, not enough to kill the electricity, but enough to make everything hiccup in unison. I stared at the tree. Flicker, flicker. The pattern felt deliberate, too clean, too spaced out. This wiring is crap, I muttered, but even I didn't buy that. I unplugged the lights entirely, moved the plug to the other outlet, turned the tree back on. Everything was fine. I sat down again. 10 seconds later, flicker. My stomach tightened. I turned toward the window again, and that was the moment I noticed something new. Not movement this time, but a shape, a subtle, barely there silhouette just inside the cluster of trees past my fence. I couldn't make out features, just height and stillness. It was definitely a person, or something shaped like one. I whispered out loud without meaning to. Hello? The shape didn't move. It didn't do anything. It just stood there like it had been there the whole time, waiting for me to notice. I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. No signal. Not even one bar. The storm had wiped out the towers. My heart was beating harder now. That quiet Christmas loneliness was gone, swallowed by something colder, sharper, more primitive. I turned off the Christmas lights altogether. The house went darker. The only glow came from the dim kitchen bulb and the faint winter moon through the clouds. Around 11:05 p.m., I made myself check the window again. The silhouette was gone, not walked away, not faded, just gone. A rush of relief hit me, followed by a much heavier dread, because now I didn't know where it went. I turned off every unnecessary light in the house, locked the back door, set the deadbolt twice, even though that does nothing to calm nerves. I paced, checked the hallway, checked the bathroom, checked the little office room I barely used. Everything was empty. I told myself I had imagined the silhouette, storm paranoia, reflections, shadows from the trees bending in the wind. I almost convinced myself, until 11:23 p.m., when the Christmas lights on the tree turned back on. By themselves, slowly, one section at a time, bottom row, middle row, top row, like someone was plugging in strings one by one. I stood absolutely still, every muscle in my body coiled. The radio popped, then hissed, then made a soft static noise like breath. I reached behind the couch and unplugged the entire power strip. The tree lights stayed on. That's when I realized the lights weren't flickering because of wiring. They were reacting to something else. Something outside, or inside, or close enough to influence the electrical flow. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. The storm got worse around midnight. The wind now sounded like a living thing pressed against the house. The walls vibrated in short, angry bursts. I went into the kitchen and grabbed the only weapon I had, an old metal flashlight. My plan was simple: stay awake until sunrise. If something happened, I'd run to the car, drive through the storm if I had to. I sat on the floor near the hallway listening. Every creak in the house felt too heavy. Every shift of wind felt like footsteps. Even my breathing started to sound too loud. It was 12:41 a.m. when I heard it. A knock. A single, soft, deliberate knock on the glass of the back window. My blood turned to ice. I didn't move. Not an inch. Then another. Light. Slow. Like fingertips tapping gently. Tap. 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 I crawled forward, keeping low, until I could see the lower part of the window. Nothing. I angled higher. Higher. And then I saw it. A handprint. Not pressed against the glass. Sliding down it. A slow trail of condensation smeared by fingers, dragged from top to bottom. I scrambled backwards so fast I hit the hallway wall. My breath was shaking out of me. My eyes watered. My brain kept insisting, lock the bedroom door. Hide. Do something. But what kept me frozen was the handprint itself. It wasn't shaped right. The fingers were too long, and they didn't separate the way normal fingers do. They stayed unnervingly close together, like the hand barely had joints, but it was still undeniably a hand. I clutched my flashlight so tightly my fingers hurt. At 1:07 a.m., everything in the house fell silent. The wind suddenly dropped. The radio stopped hissing. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. It felt like the world outside had paused, like the storm had given way to some heavier force. I didn't even notice at first, but the Christmas lights on the tree had turned red. Not flickering, just red. Every single bulb. I tried to understand how that was possible. Those bulbs couldn't change color. Then I heard the crunch of snow outside. Not random, not scattered. Footsteps, slow, steady, coming toward the house. Crunch, step, crunch, step, crunch, step. I crawled into the living room, staying low, peeking through the bottom corner of the window, where the curtain didn't fully reach. A figure stood beyond the fence again. Same height, same stillness. Only now it was closer, inside the yard. The Christmas lights on my tree glowed brighter, deep red, pulsing faintly. The figure took another step, and for the first time it moved unnaturally, not like a person walking, more like a glitch, skipping forward a few inches at a time. No sway, no shift in weight, just appearing closer with every second. I couldn't breathe. My muscles refused to obey me. Another skip forward, now halfway between the fence and my window. Another skip, now directly in front of the glass. I shut my eyes, held my breath, waited for the sound of tapping, or breaking, or something entering the house. But none of that happened. Instead, the lights turned off. Every single bulb, the tree, the kitchen, the hallway, everything. Darkness swallowed the entire house. I waited, frozen, listening for movement. Nothing. No tapping. No footsteps. No breathing. No wind. No storm. Just silence. I stayed there with my eyes closed, gripping the flashlight for dear life. When the sun finally came up around 7:10 a.m., I was still in the same position. The storm had cleared. The house was warm again. The power was back to normal. I forced myself to check the backyard. No footprints, no markings on the glass, no handprint. Nothing disturbed at all, like the whole night never happened. Except the Christmas tree. The bulbs were still red, physically red, like someone had replaced every single light with a new one. I threw the whole tree outside, didn't even unplug the lights first, just dragged it into the snow and left it there. I didn't drive to my cousin's house. I didn't celebrate Christmas at all. I spent the whole day sitting in the living room, listening to the faint hum of the heater, watching the window, waiting for the figure to return. It never did. But I swear, every now and then, when the lights in my house flicker for just a second, I feel like something is watching, not from outside, but from the reflection in the glass.